I'm Greg DePalma, and you're listening to a special Indian Wells handicapping edition of Prime Sports Tennis, brought to you by Covers.com with tennis insiders Fergal Brickley of Covers.com. On today's show, Fergal will give us some players to keep an eye on in both the men and women's draws, including the latest championship odds, picks, and more, as this Prime Sports Tennis Report on Prime Sports Network starts now. All right, thanks again for joining us for this special edition of Prime Sports Tennis for this Wednesday, the 7th of March, 2018, as we introduce a new segment to the network in an effort to provide as much data for every sport we cover, along with our media partners over at Covers.com. Well, Indian Wells is a huge event that can be described in prestige and importance in the tennis industry as just a notch below the Grand Slam events. And that's why we figured this would be a perfect time to introduce this new segment. On the men's side, it's all about new number one Roger Federer, and with anyone or whether anyone can slow his momentum down. While on the women's side, with a top player like Serena Williams just returning to the game, it should make it for a wide open affair. Before we get started, make sure to follow us on Twitter at PrimeSN and receive our latest opinions and on-demand programming alerts. But now it's time to welcome one of our new handicappers to the network from Covers.com. Covers has the best handicapping data on the web for all major sports, including tennis. And I'm very excited to have this opportunity to work with Covers and their top handicappers, including tennis handicapper Fergal Brickley. Fergal, good to have you joining us today all the way from beautiful Ireland.
Hi, Greg. Great to be on the show. Thanks for having me.
Oh, good to have you on. Before we get started, make sure to visit Covers Experts. That's experts.covers.com for the very best in sports betting information. And for a limited time only, you'll receive 50% off any purchase by using promo code PRIME50. That's PRIME50. So for Gal, first of all, first time on the network. So tell us about yourself, including when and why you started following tennis.
Well, I've played tennis all my life since I was 6 years old, and the last 10 years I've been watching the game week in, week out, learning all about the top 300 players in the world, watching them play on different surfaces, fast grass courts, slow clay courts, and just understanding what each player likes and how they match up against other players.
Yeah, you talk and the courts itself, court speeds, the bounces, important in your analysis, obviously. How is that just a matter of experience? And the more tennis you watch, the more you pick up on these things, or is this something that you can actually find, or is this something that you actually compilate, on your computer with data? How does that work? Or is it more just more of a feel and your eye watching the events and watching the court surfaces?
Well, you definitely have to watch the events, but there's an awful lot of statistics online. You see the Australian Open, the courts were much faster than other years, and now you're switching to Indian Wells. That's almost like a clay court. It's one of the slowest hard courts on the tour. So knowing what players play well on clay, it can translate fairly well to Indian Wells.
All right, and tell us. Let's start with the men's side, because Roger Federer is the overwhelming favorite. He's just about an even money shot. And why shouldn't he be? So which players on the men's side do you think might fit here at Indian Wells, and especially when you take a look at the draw?
Well, yeah, as I said, Roger Federer, pretty much a seamless path to the semi-finals, and even then he'll play Dimitrov, who's nominated. Possibly might face Nick Kyrgios, but that's a big possibility whether Nick turns up or not. And then a final against probably Marin Cilic or Juan Martín del Potro. Looks pretty good right now for Roger.
Yeah, Kyrgios I was going to say Kyrgios being at 25-1. So out of that group that you just mentioned, he's the biggest long shot, but he's also a wild card. I mean, you just don't know what to expect from Nick, whether or not he gets bounced, the first round, or whether or not he can make the type of run he made at the Australian Open.
Yeah, it's impossible to tell with him. He could come out and play like a world-class player in the first round, and the next day he comes out and just doesn't turn up. He's an extremely difficult player to read, but if he turns up, he came very close to beating Roger last year. But again, the question, it's a big if whether he turns up or not.
All right, and what other players were you going to talk about before I cut you off? I mean, Novak is the second choice, but you can't trust Novak, not at 6-1, can you?
No, the price is absolutely terrible. I think if I'm going to bet on Novak, I'm going to have to see him at least play for a month or two consistently, especially with all the elbow debacle. Absolutely no value on Novak. He'll take on Juan Martín del Potro in probably the fourth round. I would certainly be back in Del Potro in that situation. He's coming in off winning the title in Acapulco last week. Fairly similar conditions, so moving relatively slow. And yeah, no value in Novak at the moment.
What about Grigor? He is 16-1, and I'd rather take Dimitrov than Novak at 6-1. I mean, even though Dimitrov was a little bit disappointing, the fact that he could not go further at the Australian Open, and he's another player that just has not been able to get over the hump and win the big Grand Slam. Now, this is not a Grand Slam, but this is the next best thing. So 16-1, those are pretty good odds for a player like Dimitrov. Do you think that? What do you think about him on this surface?
Yeah, I think he's got a very good chance. Now he has a pretty tough draw. He'll probably take on Verdasco in the second round, which isn't easy, and then Rublev, who gave him quite a match at the Australian Open.
Oh yeah.
Then you're probably looking at Batista go in the fourth round, and then quarter final maybe against Kevin Anderson. Tough draws, but if he comes through those matches, then 16-1 heading into the semi-final after being tested, definitely a good price. But again, mentally, I think Roger just absolutely dominated him previous years, and can't really see him beating Roger.
Yeah. If you get the feeling that if Dimitrov is going to win an event like this when Roger's in it, he's going to need somebody else probably to knock him off. What about you have any other top, like maybe sleepers, 50-1 shots, that area that might be able to, who knows, win a couple of matches, upset a couple of players, maybe make it to the semis or the final? Anybody out there that stick out to you?
Yeah, I think Kyle Edmund at 50-1 has a real shot. This should be his best surface. He enjoys slower surfaces, but showed at the Australian Open that he can play on quick surfaces as well. Really, the problem with Kyle was his really extreme grip on the forehand, so returning was a problem, and if it was rushed on that side, it was a real problem. Playing on play kind of reduces that. You get more time on the ball. He's a pretty decent draw. He'll definitely come out of his boy into the second round. He should get out of that.
All right.
Then a match against probably Diego Schwartzman in the third round. Yeah, the draw opened up pretty nicely for him after that.
Yeah, and that's a good price for a player that sure is coming. I mean, he's coming off that as far as big events, he's coming off his best event ever for a big one at the Australian Open, and now we'll see if he can take the next step. All right, so let's talk about the women because they don't have a Roger Federer there. Their Roger Federer, Serena Williams, is just coming back. First time after the birth of her child that she's playing on the WTA Tour. She played, in the Fed Cup in Asheville, which is just a few minutes from where I live, a few weeks ago. Lost to doubles with her sister, but this is a completely different situation. Being able to play, I know she played a little bit also in New York. I get that, but here we are. This is a big event. She's 12-1, but I mean, not a realistic shot for Serena to be able to come back and win. I mean, none of these players, of course, when she was on top of her game, could match up with her. Serena's not on top of her game right now, and there's a lot of good players around. There's 6-7 players that are all ranging from 8-1 to 16-1. That just shows you how much parity there is on the women's game.
Yeah, the field is just completely open right now. Definitely no value in Serena's price. She should come through her first round against Serena Diaz, then even her second round against Kiki Bertens. She's beaten Bertens twice, but the first set in both of those matches went to a tiebreak. So there's not much separating them. And even if she comes through that, she has to play Venus in the third round. And right now, I think Venus will beat her.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you look at Venus. I'd much rather go with Venus at 50-1 to win the championship than Serena at 12-1 because Serena just really, I mean, realistically, it just doesn't make any sense. It would be a dramatic accomplishment for her to be able to win the event. Whereas we know Venus may not be playing her best tennis right now, but fact is, I mean, she's still in game shape. And what about the other player returning, Vika? I mean, Vika's at 50-1, but you don't give her much of a chance either, do you?
No, but the thing with Vika is it wasn't an injury; it was a custody battle, which is obviously mentally draining. But
True.
I think she has a really good chance to get over her first round against Heather Watson. She's beaten Heather 5 times, all on fairly quick courts, which would suit Heather. So this slower surface really gives Azarenka a massive edge. And she's around minus 180 betting wise right now. That price will probably move in because money should come for Watson, given that Azarenka's had such a long layoff. But yeah, definitely Azarenka a good bet for the first round.
All right, and what about any potential sleepers or players that are right past those top players, the Sharapovas, the Madison Keys, any of those type of players, Garcia, taking a look at their draw, taking a look at them at this event on this surface, who do you like?
Yeah, you just mentioned Caroline Garcia at 33-1, absolutely huge value. Get the buy into the second round, and her draw after that, she could definitely make a quarterfinal. She'll have Angelique Kerber. That'll be a very tough match, but at 33-1, her game really suits these courts. She's really nice top spin ground strokes, well able to shape the ball and move it around the court. Great mover herself. Yeah, great price and conditions she really like.
All right, and by the way, it's easy for anybody to go, all right, Roger Federer. Let me ask you about, first of all, before I ask you for a player or two to win this thing on the women's side with all those favorites, with Roger being the sole favorite, and again, he's about an even money favorite. I'm one who usually doesn't like going down the road of even money on a lot of events or things of that nature. But sometimes I will. And in that rare circumstance that I do, it's usually like this, when you get a player as good as Roger Federer is, and you just say to yourself, well, you know what? He's just too good. He's on top of his game. Yeah, I think he's winning this tournament. And even money is actually okay. I can handle even money because, hey, it's better than minus 200 or minus 300. So why not go out there and just put up whatever. I could put up 500 and make 500. There's nothing wrong with that when you're taking Roger Federer. So how do you usually look at that, depending on the player and the event and so forth, when you're looking at a player that's price is so low like Roger?
Well, definitely plus 125 in a 96-man draw is pretty unusual, unless you're Roger Federer, that is. Yeah, looking at his first 3 matches, he's going to be, I'd say, minus 2,000 in each of them, really. So really just quarterfinal, semi-final and final. Those are the 3 matches, and looking at his quarterfinals, probably against Dominic Thiem or Thomas Berdych, he should win that easily. Then on to the semi-final, Dimitrov, probably should win that easily again. So they're probably looking at a plus 125 price for a final, really. Yeah, player of his level in the draw, that is pretty weak now with Noah Murray, Wawrinka, Nadal. Plus 125 is, actually quite good value.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, now as far as the women though, there's a bunch of women there sitting at between 8 and 16-1, as I mentioned, including Svitolina, who's the favorite. You've got now Muguruza. I like because I like it when she's paired up with Conchita Martinez. That's a big difference, and as far as coaching for her, so I'm interested in her. You got Wozniacki, you got Halep. I'm surprised Pliskova is up to 16-1, but she hasn't been on top of her game. But still, that's a pretty decent price. Kvitova's playing well. Kerber's playing well. So out of that group and maybe a couple others, give me a player or two based on the draw and the surface that you're targeting.
Definitely Simona Halep at 9-1. She's had an amazing 2018 so far. She's only lost 1 match to Caroline Wozniacki in the Australian Open final. She showed amazing fight during that tournament. Won 15-13 in the third set against Lauren Davis, then 9-7 in the third set against Angelique Kerber in the semi-final. And then it was really just fatigue and that ankle injury that prevented her from winning the tournament outright. Then she went to Doha 3 weeks later, She withdrew from her semi-final, again another injury, but for 3 matches before that, she didn't drop a set, and she won 2 of those sets 6-love, and she said she was playing injured all week, so it's a pretty scary prospect. If she is fit, big value at plus 900, and I think even bigger value if you want to take a smaller future on to get to the semi-final or to win her quarter. She's plus 200, and looking at her opponents in that side of the draw, not too many of them like these conditions. Konta, Sablikova, Motton, Bencic, all would enjoy a faster hardcourt. Halpa's former champion. Huge value in her right now.
Now, what do you do during the tournament itself? You have a lot of people that will, as far as Twitter or Facebook or any other social media devices, if people want to know what you're thinking about during the tournament, how does that go? How do people, follow you in the way you analyze as the tournament goes on, or any tournament goes on?
We're actually not really on social media much at the moment. We're just working with Covers. But Covers have a side piece called Steamware, and we offer in-play matches there.
Okay.
Tennis is a real sport for betting on in-play because there's so many momentum shifts. You would think most of the players would have some mental strength, but the majority of them don't. So there's always good spots for meltdowns and things like that. Pretty much just affiliate Covers at the moment, but hopefully bringing our expertise to social media too.
Yeah, and also, is there any other sport? You got to have other, being in Ireland, you a big football fan, and I'm not talking American football, obviously. So are you a big football fan? Are you getting, is that something that, is that just bred in you or not? Or you more into tennis?
Definitely a massive football fan, growing up with it. Tennis isn't a massive sport in Ireland, so it's kind of unique enough. Not too many people around that you can talk to about it, but football, definitely everything really.
Yeah, right. And that's the thing. Tennis it has become an international sport. It's a sport that seems to at times to also be more popular outside the United States. So even though everything kind of, the origin is the U.S. With everything. So, but that's someone like you who, again, it's easy for you to go, I'll cover football. Why not? But then again, so does everybody else. But not everybody does cover tennis. And if you carve a nice niche into a sport like tennis, and you could do a good job like you guys do over at Covers, then that's something. That's something to be proud of, and it's nice to talk to a fellow tennis fan, especially somebody who watches it a lot more than I do. And it's great to have you on the network and give us an opportunity and our listeners to find out from your perspective, what are you thinking about as far as Indian Wells? And we'll look to talk to you again when Miami comes up in a couple of weeks. So thanks for your time, Fergal, and we look forward to talking to you again in a few weeks and maybe even more shows down the road.
Yep, thanks for having me, Greg, and enjoy the tournament.
Appreciate it. Thank you. All right, that is Fergal Brickley, and again with Covers.com. They are going to be with us handicapping a bunch of other sports here on the network. We've already had some college basketball talk with Steve Merrill. We've had Brady Cannon on for golf. So I think that's 3 straight days. Tennis, golf, college basketball, and we're just getting started. So hopefully we're able to pick up Fergal's Irish accent. I was able to get about 75% of it, so hopefully you were too. Anyway, he did a great job, and we're glad to have him on with our partners, our media partners over at Covers. And by the way, Covers Experts, that's experts.covers.com. And as I said at the open, for a limited time only, you can take 50% off any purchase by using promo code PRIME50. That's PRIME50. And check us out on iTunes and YouTube on the Prime Sports Network. Follow us on Twitter at PrimeSN. We'll see you at 2 o'clock with our draft talk with Dan Shanka and 6 o'clock with our college basketball talk with Scott Zalotoro and Jamal Murphy. For Fergal Brickley, I'm Greg DePalma. We'll talk to you next time here on Prime Sports Tennis.